Hey there, this is Delve, the official management thought leadership podcast of McGill University. My name's Eric, I'm Delve's managing editor, and I'm going to be your host today. So I'm really excited about today's interview because I think it encapsulates everything we're trying to do here at Delve. This episode is about bringing people together from different disciplines to support leaders and managers with new ways of thinking, new ideas, new ways of tackling world challenges. And today we're doing that with none other than Macbeth by William Shakespeare. So, as you're going to hear, this play is still as relevant today as it was 400 years ago. Joining me to explore its ideas are Paul Yachnin, Tomlinson Professor in Shakespeare Studies here at McGill University, and Laurette Dubé, Professor Emerita in Consumer Psychology, also here at McGill. And we're not just looking at Macbeth today. Laurette and Paul are also putting forward the argument that just as AI can process and reflect parts of humanity back to us, we can't forget about that much older thinking machine that does a lot of the same thing: theater. So this conversation is a preview of an upcoming event on January 28th, so I'll leave a link in the show notes with more details. And if you have any questions or feedback about this episode, or even if you just want to say hello, feel free to give me a shout. You can reach me at delve@mcgill.ca. So all right, let us delve into the lessons of Macbeth. Here's me with Professors Paul Yachnin and Laurette Dubé. All right, so I am here with Professor Laurette Dubé, Professor Emerita in Consumer Psychology from here at the Desautels Faculty of Management at McGill University. And I am also here with Professor Paul Yachnin, Tomlinson Professor of Shakespeare Studies, also here from McGill. Thanks so much for joining. Welcome to the show.
It's Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you.
So I'm really excited that you're here because this is going to be a bit of a preview of an event that's coming up in January. So this is Reimagining Shakespeare, Remaking World Systems. I believe this is the second iteration of this event. So Delve was involved with it last year. And yeah, we're taking a slightly different angle to it this year and exploring some interesting ideas. So I wonder if maybe what we could start with is just kind of talking about the focus of this year's event.
With pleasure. So, it is because Robert Lepage produced and directed Macbeth at Stratford in Ontario, and he's doing it in French, in Québécois, at the TNM this winter. And so this is an opportunity that was too valuable for us to miss. And because we've already been spending a good deal more than a year thinking together with Shakespeare and a group of extraordinary people across the disciplines, that we could not pass up the opportunity to think with the play Macbeth, to think with Robert Lepage, and with the two extraordinary women who are playing Lady Macbeth in the English and the Québécois version.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then how does this connect to management, Laurette?
Very much connected. Last year, we were having a discussion about Shakespeare and promoting the convergence of money-making and meaning-making, which is a core challenge that management and society is facing. With Robert Lepage, we go one step further. We all know the central place of AI and digital technology in remaking human-made system, whether it's finance or health or whatever. And more and more, not enough though, it is recognized that if we are to keep human at the center of this development, we need to bring the arts and the humanity to tackle the messiness of us as human beings, the complexity, the contextual variation, and so on and so forth.
And let me just follow up on something that Laurette said about Robert Lepage and how he uses theater to think and to think about where we are now. Because, one of the things that I think it's important to recognize is AI is the new amazing technology that is a thinking machine. But human beings have been creating thinking machines for several thousands of years. And I think the first thinking machine is theater itself.
Yeah.
It is a technology that we bring questions to it,
Right.
and it has a full-fledged technical side to it, but the humans are fully integrated into that technology.
Yeah.
They are, as it were, moving parts and making parts in this very ancient thinking machine.
Yeah, AI is just this fantastic tool for reflecting things back at us. Like, it's trained on the entirety of human knowledge. And then so when you type a prompt into it, it just spits that back out at us, and it can teach us a lot about ourselves. And to your point, literature and art is kind of the original tool for doing that. So I wonder if maybe we could do this in maybe a small way right now, and let's just see what maybe Macbeth can reflect back at us about the current century and the current moment that we're in. So something that struck me when I just preparing for this conversation, when I rewatched the play, was just that it kind of reads to me as this giant metaphor for what happens when you don't deal with your own trauma. So Macbeth is himself steeped in war, violence, and he is later ridden with guilt and shame for killing King Duncan. And then he just kind of, and then that kind of comes back to bite him when someone ends up assassinating him after, just his slow descent into paranoia and political turmoil. And so, I'm just curious how you guys see how this connects with how we as a society kind of deal with our traumas, on a collective level and on a personal level, because I think there's maybe a lot of parallels there.
So let me begin, and then I will pass the torch to Laurette, because what I have to say is more darkness than light, because I think you're precisely right. Duncan, near the start of the play, he's embracing the victorious Macbeth, who saved him from the invaders. And he says, "Welcome hither, I have begun to plant thee, and will labor to make thee full of growing." And this is a wonderful organic metaphor about how we need to connect with the earth as if we were plants as well, and think about how we're rooted in nature. And the temporality that we embrace is not a temporality of the instant, but a temporality that is always looking forward to future growth. The king's organic metaphor makes it sound as if the world of the play is a piece of deep cooperation and mutual support with nature, where men work together as if they had their roots deep in the fruitful earth. A world of collective action oriented toward a good and generative future. But the truth of it is, Duncan is like a man who remembers the words of a song he used to love, but he no longer really understands the song or is able to live by it. In fact, the world of the play is nothing like Duncan is saying here. It is racked by violence, war, and cutthroat competition among the thanes. Macbeth himself is honored and advanced on account of his brilliant abilities as a killer. So yeah, absolutely. The nurturing and healing is very hard to find. So let me just mention the sparks of light.
Yeah.
They are there in the words that Duncan speaks about planting and growing and harvesting. And they are there far more movingly in the babes and the children that live in the language that the characters speak. The children that actually appear on stage and are murdered in the play before our eyes. The predominance of infanticide and what is called ecocide, the destruction, the killing of nature in the play, amounts to an eradication of our natural movement through time. That idea of being planted, growing, and being harvested. And that's why I'm so intent on the idea of intergenerational healing, the way our children can help heal us as we care for them. And that is something, of course, that does not occur in the play.
If you look at where we are now in our world, with so many kings floating around, and we are not far from where Macbeth starts. And the question is that there is a lesson that this floating around and this cutthroat murder competition and so on does have an end in some way. Everybody died, in fact, there, and we all die as human beings. So that's one piece that I think that this pragmatism that we need to have when we look at the current state of the world, that is an important piece of thought that we all need to have, regardless of the human-made system that we are looking into. I was just in meeting before this with colleagues from around the world on some science diplomacy stuff. And someone who was just, who had been in China for many, many times over the years, was saying how over the last 5 years or so, the strategic shift toward clean technology and so on and so forth, supposedly the air pollution, it's much, much, much better than it was earlier. So change may happen. They happen if they are considered with pragmatism, where we are and where we can be. Human, we have a lot of possibilities of all type. Our nature is complex, as much bad as good, but we cannot do anything if we don't embrace some of that complexity.
Yes, I mean, I think another angle that came to mind for me was just how, and like this, yeah, I think this connects pretty strongly to today as well, is just like the gender dynamics in the play. So I think a lot about the manosphere, this kind of like culture of toxic masculinity that has developed online. And like in Macbeth, there's a big theme of toxic masculinity. Like as he's considering, murdering the king, like Lady Macbeth kind of plays into this a little bit when he accuses him of being less of a man if he doesn't go through with it. And that seemed like it was kind of like the final push for him to be like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I'm just curious to hear more about like how you feel that toxic masculinity piece plays in here and how that maybe connects to the world today.
Absolutely. And just to say that the phrase toxic masculinity, we need to pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's often taken to mean that masculinity in itself is toxic.
Yeah.
And I want to suggest that there are forms of masculinity that are toxic, but there are others, and it's Macduff at the end when he's told that his family has been slaughtered. He says, "All my pretty ones." Did you say all? Oh, hell-kite, all. What, all my pretty chickens and their dam at one fell swoop. And Malcolm says to him, a la Lady Macbeth, dispute it like a man.
Mm.
In other words, go kill him. And Macduff says, I shall do so, but I must also feel it as a man. So the play gives us back a sense of manhood as something that includes the heart and the soul, as well as the muscular arm and the unchecked desire to be king. Okay, let me talk a little bit about what you're bringing to the table, Eric.
Sure.
First of all, without Lady Macbeth, Macbeth would not have committed the assassination.
Mm.
She's a really good wife. This is the thing. If it's true,
but is it the case? Is it the case that without Lady Macbeth, he would not have? Because he was quite excited. He's quite excited after the witches' comment.
You are absolutely right. He's got it in his mind, but he also has these things growing up inside him that we could call conscience. There are seeds in his mind that are growing, and his task under the tutelage of his wife is to stomp on them so that the plants, the seedlings of conscience do not grow. And she's really good at that. When she says, come on, when you said you would do it, then you were a man.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so different from what Macduff says at the end of the play. But the fact that there are these seeds within Macbeth is really important. There is the possibility that we can change. There is something in human beings that is good, that is capable of thinking about the well-being of our children and their children and the well-being of the planet. It's often bent out of shape. It has been bent out of shape for several hundred years by the unbridled pursuit of profit, by the growth of the extractive industries. But we see fitfully, one step forward, two steps back kind of thing. But we are trying to push on that by bringing the arts and what the arts have to say to people in positions of power and policy.
Well, Laurette, I mean, earlier you alluded to like, oh, maybe Macbeth would have done this without Lady Macbeth. And like, yeah, I don't know, not to let Macbeth off the hook here, because like he does have ambitions of being king, and it felt like he was seduced by the fantasy. Like as soon as he heard the prophecy, like it felt like, oh, this might be a real possibility here, And so I don't know, and I think like the way we read Lady Macbeth, like I don't know, I think she gets a lot of blame, but I don't know, Laurette. Like it sounds like you might have some thoughts there, so I'm curious what your take is on that things.
This dynamics between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth is a very complex one, in the sense that every human being ultimately is autonomous, but we are in relation. So I do believe that most likely he would have done it in any case. If you look when he's back with the witches, Paul, Lady Macbeth is not there, but he is clearly wanting that being king and so on. So that's one thing. And the other point also, what it brings, and I think our two Lady Macbeths wants to bring this in the discussion, is the whole of man and woman in society, and one man and woman in a couple. So I'm sorry, but I don't think that the perfect wife or perfect husband will be one that does whatever I want or push whatever I want. So that the discussion that we want to have there, it's kind of the individual and relational level, at the micro level of a couple, but also at the level of society. When I was talking to Violette, our Lady Macbeth Québécoise, not French, is that she was saying that Lady Macbeth in some way is more a victim than a guilty person into this. And she's saying, have things really changed that much in our modern society between this dynamics man, woman, and couple relationship and so on? I think that's a key angle that the play brings some food for thoughts. I don't know what you think, Paul.
I think that's really smart. Absolutely. That Lady Macbeth's relationship with Macbeth, I do think that she has a wifely role, a role of support, but there's something that is moving her toward dissent against him and what he is undertaking. But so that she is a victim as well as an evildoer. And the thing is, of course, that it's the same thing, though in different ways, for Macbeth himself. He's destroyed by what he does. He has that short soliloquy at the end where he says, and it's a wonderful natural metaphor where he says, I don't have any friends. No one loves me. I have nothing. I've become like a withered tree. The leaves are falling from me and they will not grow again. So it's the thing about human beings that we have a capacity for good, for caring for our children and caring for the planet. But the kinds of systems that we have grown up in modernity have got inside us. The way war and the honor system of war has got inside Macbeth. And you see the war going on inside him between the seedlings of his conscience and his goodness and his sense that he must surpass every other man in Scotland to become king. So the play is extraordinary that way because, of course, if Macbeth was simply an evil man, we wouldn't feel what we feel. But we look at him every step of the way. He's killing himself as well as killing others.
It's interesting. Like, it takes a special kind of person to want to be king, I feel. Like, I don't know. Like, and I think about this, like, from my own experience, too. So I'm fortunate enough to be educated. I'm fortunate enough to, like, have a platform through this podcast. And I've tried to orient my career to have some degree of influence on the world by sharing ideas. And hopefully someone will be able to take them and go make some positive changes on the planet. And, like, I think Macbeth's ambitions to become king and to, like, have influence, and like maybe they came from a good place to start and they kind of ended in this really tragic place. But I'm curious, like, what kind of lessons there are here for people who are seeking influence in big and small ways, because, like, whether you're looking for a management position in your organization or if you're seeking political office, you know, it's I'm curious, like, what kind of connections there are there.
The question that you're putting to us is a very difficult question. I think anybody who is doing a degree in management, who is looking forward to a career in business, needs to come over to our side of the campus, just as we need to come over to your side of the campus. I was talking to one of the students last week, and I said, so how do we deal with the problem that we're facing? And she looked at me and she said, education. And I went, oh, I'm so dumb. Of course, it's education that allows us to see different ways of being in the world. So, and this, of course, is Laurette's strength. She has many strengths, but her main strength, I think this is true, Laurette, is the way she brings people from very different disciplines, different ways of thinking, together to talk to each other so that we can begin to think differently from how we have been taught to think. So the problem with Macbeth in the play is that he's been raised as a soldier. There are places in his mind and his soul that are deeper and kinder than that, but he suppresses them. And so our job, and just as you're saying, if this makes sense, is just to try to educate people, to give them different ideas, different views, different ways of thinking.
Yeah, and maybe nurture that seed of goodness. And,
that's right.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting what you are saying. In preparing with Robert Lepage, preparing for our conversation with Robert Lepage, that makes me realize he is 3 or 4 years younger than me. So we are both children of the Quiet Revolution. And if you look at, I don't know for Robert, but me, I was coming from a 13 kids farming family in Gaspésie, and the Quiet Revolution that makes free education and free healthcare made the whole life trajectory possible. So education and common goods being created by communities, whether that community is your neighborhood or your country, and that common good, education is important. It's not the only panacea, though, because back to the convergence, bringing those different perspectives on the same topic in a solution-oriented manner, that's the second thing, because it's easy to say that everything is dark, but how do you pull some light and scale up the light? But that requires, though, to work at the interfaces, understanding what is it in the process, the value, whatever, of one sector of society, of one discipline, what is it that is relevant to bring at the interface with the other one, and then how can we translate this in concrete solutions that account for where we are now and what are the various possible pathways that can be taken. And that's the challenge. Our industrial development has been, you do business on one side, you have engineer on the other side that makes the thing, and you get the arts and humanity, and you get the health that are there to save the world. But it is all this need of looking at all those factors in a concrete, solution-oriented way. And that's really what the discussion would be when on the 28th.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm just looking at the time, and I feel like we could talk for a lot longer, but maybe we'll save that for the event. So that's January 28th, Reimagining Shakespeare, Remaking World Systems. I will put a link to the registration in the show notes for this episode for anyone who wants to attend. But Professor Laurette Dubé, Professor Paul Yachnin, thank you for this really fun conversation. It's not often I get to talk about literature and Shakespeare, so I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome.
All right, and that's the show. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Professors Paul Yachnin and Laurette Dubé, for joining us. And the conversation isn't over yet. It will continue on January 28th at the event Reimagining Shakespeare, Remaking World Systems. There's a link in the show notes with more details if you want to register. So my name is Eric Dicaire. I'm Delve's managing editor, and I was your host today. I also produced and edited this episode. Professor Saku Mantra is Delve's noble leader, our editor-in-chief, and he produced all of our original music. So we'll be back with more insightful conversations very, very soon, so make sure you're subscribed in your favorite podcast player. And until then, take care.